So you want me to react to, I think this is a new canon video anyway, which is like, okay, I guess. The only type of Jedi Palpatine actually loved. I don't know what he means, but in the new canon there was something about Palpatine having a wife or something else stupid. But I don't know what the clickbaity title means. I guess we'll see.
Today we are...
Why are you both... Yes, I'm not gonna ask that.
Going to start this holocron by asking you a question. Is it wrong for a Jedi to rule an entire planet? Greetings, acolytes, and welcome back to the archives. The Jedi are known for being the peacekeepers of the Republic.
So he asks...
Question. Is it wrong for a Jedi to rule an entire planet?
Historically, Jedi have been Supreme Chancellors before. I think around the Recent Reformations was the first non-Jedi Supreme Chancellor since the Republic was formed. So no, it's not wrong for a Jedi to rule over certain worlds and planets and things. However, you also look at it going, they need to uphold the values of the Jedi and not fall to the dark side because power does corrupt.
Greetings, acolytes, and welcome back to the archives.
I'm answering his question. This is new canon crap. Anyway.
The Jedi are known for being the peacekeepers of the Republic, using their powers in the Force to serve the greater good, but not usurp rulership. Such a thing is believed to be a Sith trait, one that Palpatine respected highly, but
to usurp is different than to be democratically elected and to be given the power in a legitimate way.
It was once a young
New canon image. That's all. That's what I was referencing.
Powers in the Force to serve the greater good, but not usurp rulership.
Because this is the vibes of all that High Republic stuff.
Such a thing is believed to be a Sith trait, one that Palpatine...
This is an image from one of the Wizards of the Coast source books, I think. It's the Jedi Academy training manual.
Respected highly, but it was once a young Palpatine's opinion that the Jedi could have ruled if they ever wanted to, when speaking to his soon-to-be Master Plague.
This is the new cover for Darth Plagueis in the Essential Legends collection.
Yes, a young Palpatine said this. I think that the Jedi have dedicated themselves to limiting change. They wait for the Senate to tell them when and where to intervene, and what to fix, when in fact they could use the Force to impose their will on the entire galaxy if they wanted. I'd have more...
I'm of the mind that I assume that they're talking about new canon unless they say otherwise.
Respect for them if they did. We've known forever that Palpatine's hatred for the Jedi goes beyond purely ideological differences.
This is the other cover for Darth Plagueis, one of the other covers from Darth Plagueis from a reprint.
He knows that they have power but refuse to use it, and what he sees as a worthy purpose, that being rulership. Rulership of entire planets, or even the galaxy if the Jedi chose. But what if I told you that there did exist a certain sect of Jedi that would fit this bill perfectly? A type of Jedi that Sidious would have undoubtedly come across in his research. Well, today, my friends, we're going to open a holocron and talk about the ancient Jedi Lords. Just the very name can send shivers up the spine. The name Lord is often associated with Sith Lords, and it sounds completely foreign with the word Jedi in front of it. It almost has dark connotations, and yet, the Jedi Lords may have been one of the best things that ever happened to the galaxy during a 100-year period in the new Sith War.
Yeah, Hoth had the title of Lord, and like it, if you look at real life, Lord isn't necessarily a bad title with bad connotations to it. It's a position of some power because you're commanding people, basically. And you're maybe in charge of some land, but not necessarily.
Circa 1100 BBY to 1000 BBY, there were a number of Jedi who would take up this informal title.
When is this? 7 days ago. Okay.
See, the Republic was so weakened by the Sith that most star systems outside of the core worlds were left defenseless. To address this, several members of the Jedi Order began quests to rout entire systems of Sith influence and purge
This is sweet, alright.
those who sought to enslave or exploit the citizens. Standing as these systems' only line of defense, the individual Jedi would rally planet defenses and manage to fight back the Sith oppressors in a more hands-on way. The citizens of these worlds loved their Jedi protectors and began to celebrate them for their noble leadership. Due to their need to rally armies and protect the systems effectively, it wasn't long before the Jedi would actually begin to amass political power as well. Interestingly, this wasn't some sort of Jedi takeover though. They weren't trying to usurp control. They were only using the tools that were necessary and available. And for a Jedi, political power is just another tool and should be treated with just as much caution and reverence as the powers in the Force do. But this humble approach to leadership only ended up giving them more political might, as the citizens celebrated the Jedi's selflessness in defense of their homes. Once these individual Jedi had
I guess some of them are AI generated, but I don't know because I'm not familiar with all of the content. Because, like, I cringe at these, but this is exactly what New Canon would do from what I've seen. Some of them could be, some of them could not be. Who knows?
They weren't trying to usurp control. They were only using the tools that were necessary and available. And for a Jedi, political power is just another tool and should be treated with just as much caution and reverence as the powers in the Force do. But this humble approach to leadership only ended up giving them more political might, as the citizens celebrated the Jedi's selflessness in defense of their homes. Once these individual Jedi had properly purged the Sith, they stayed behind on these worlds as Jedi Watchmen, but much different from the Sentinel Watchmen of the future. These Jedi became kings and barons of entire star systems, as the citizens begged them to stay. Rather than hold the mantle of their royal titles, though, they became known as the Jedi Lords. They established castles and manors as their permanent residence, and even went as far as to make hereditary lineages, marrying for political reasons, and having offspring which would inherit the titles for several generations. Each of the offsprings were Force-sensitive, and would train as Jedi before taking on the mantle as Lord, when they themselves were ready. Amidst the galaxy of darkness, in a time when the Sith were running rampant, all of the systems under the control of a Jedi Lord stood as beacons.
This is art from Fantasy Flight Games. I think it's the downloadable extra adventure that continues on the beginner game.
Of light and peace, sanctuaries of safety from anyone who suffered at the hands of the Sith.
It's generic Jedi number, whatever.
The Jedi Lords started gaining more and more power within the Jedi Order itself, as well as the political sphere. They would establish a council of their own, separate from the High Council, calling...
So, I was just having a look between the two things. The canon version has a thing that, but it was considered ancient. It's a sign of respect that they continue using the honorific, whereas in the... So I basically know as much as that, other than if it's expanded upon, like the Essential Guide to Warfare did expand upon a few things. But I haven't read the Essential Guide to Warfare properly. I like reading the actual stories more. But, it does mention in the EU page about Jedi looking after worlds and that sort of stuff. And so that probably also led to the Supreme Chancellors and things. Yeah, even Coruscant and the Galactic Senate was presided over by Supreme Chancellors. But I don't know how much of the extra stuff he's saying is just fluff. Because from Path of Destruction and Jedi vs. Sith and Dark Forces 2, I didn't really get all of this extra information in the back of it. I wonder... Yeah, Essential Guide to Warfare. Actually, you could probably bring that up. Let me have a look-see. I'll have a look while this continues playing and I listen.
This, the Jedi Grand Council. The Grand Council and the High Council constantly competed for power and the support of the Knights. Amazingly, the Grand Council was not under the jurisdiction of the High Council because it was completely comprised of Jedi Lords. Lords who made the decisions on their own behalf, and on the behalf of the rest of the Lords who had built kingdoms around the galaxy. It was at this point that the High Council and the average member of the Jedi Order started to become wary of the Jedi Lords, believing that they may be accepting too much power unbefitting of a Jedi. During the latter days of the new Sith Wars, the High Council believed that Lord Hoth, who was serving as a general in the fight against the Sith, was becoming too radicalized. And so the High Council raised up a champion of their own, who they believed possessed the facilities to spearhead the war. And that Jedi's name was Skir Khan. Unfortunately for the High Council, this would be the most catastrophic failure that they would be responsible for. Skir Khan fell to the dark side, and would end up becoming the one who put together the Brotherhood of Darkness. The Grand Council would then unanimously decide to put together the Army of Light to oppose the Brotherhood of Darkness and the new Sith, placing Lord Hoth in charge of all of the Jedi in their collective kingdoms. After this was the infamous Ruusan campaign, which we plan to make an entire video on, detailing the Sith's most humiliating defeat, as well as was the bloodiest battle between the Jedi and the Sith that they had ever fought. So if you're interested to learn more about that, be sure to check out our upcoming video. But it was following this traumatizing war and the shocking detonation of the thought bomb that the Jedi decided to make drastic changes. The Ruusan Reformation was signed, which would formally dissolve the Army of Light and prevent the Jedi from ever creating a formalized military without gaining Senate approval first. The High Council thought it was best to put an end to the Jedi Lord title as well, and the remaining lords would willingly surrender their positions and return as normal masters, but they were all treated with disdain by many regular Jedi who believed them to be heretics. There were some of the Jedi Lords who indeed gave up their titles but refused to rejoin the main part of the Order, believing that their place was still at home with their people and their new families. Some of these Jedi would splinter into two factions, the Corellian Jedi and the Tipo Paladins. The Corellian Jedi, also known as the Green Jedi, were still a part of the Order, but were highly individualized, and held the well-being of Corellia over that of the Republic and the Jedi Order, their loyalty still being with the people that they had sworn to protect. After being treated with contempt by their Jedi brothers at the end of the new Sith War, the Green Jedi would continue acting as the rulers and judicators of Corellia, establishing their own lineage on the world. They were still considered a part of the Jedi. However, they had a very rocky relationship with the main branch and the Council. They didn't adhere to most of the High Council's rulings and only acted to the benefit of Corellia, shirking all other Jedi duties. This would continue all the way until the Clone Wars, when the Green Jedi refused to interact with the Republic's politics. And
the Tipo Paladins were mentioned in Coruscant Nights 1 Jedi Twilight, and they're also mentioned in the Essential Guide to Warfare. But, they formed the Grey Paladins, which is a subsection of the Jedi Order that is very different, but also ends up coming under the Jedi Order. It's just one of those things that's mentioned in one book and then expanded upon in the Essential Guide to Warfare, which is actually probably good to bring up considering what's going to be continuing on with the Star Wars Saga Edition campaign. So I wish Wikipedia added page numbers for where they get the information. So we have the Tipo Paladins were around Clone Wars, which I'm trying to have a look here at the information as we go. So page 73 is where Clone Wars stuff starts. And then it would be, actually, if it's Jedi Twilight, it should be mentioned only during the Jedi Purge. But of course I have a physical copy, and I don't think I have a PDF to search. Oh, you're welcome to have a crack at sending a video. Hi, Mr. Shark. We're talking about stuff.
Became a part of the Alliance of Neutral Systems, and unfortunately, they would all be largely wiped out and targeted by the Jedi Purge, Palpatine leaving no stone unturned. The Tipo Paladins were a group who served under the Jedi Lord Tipo during the New Sith War, and they followed his teachings closely, and were actually not considered a part of the Jedi due to their more liberal beliefs. They accepted the use of blasters and other weapons alongside their lightsabers, and along with this, they would wear masks which muted their physical perceptions as a means of growing more in tune with the Force.
So my impression that I got from Jedi Twilight was that the Grey Paladins were still a part of the Order, or allowed to be. Of course they couldn't really, the Jedi wouldn't really be contending. But does it say that? Yeah, it's just I have to find the part that says about them. The Lord stuff, I feel like a bunch has been added in, but that could be information from the New Essential Chronology that I'm not sure of. I wish that he'd show some sources to really back up what he's saying. So it's before the rebellion. Like, the Essential Guide to Warfare stuff lines up enough. He should have also, at the start of the video, said, look, this is Legends information. Of course, he'd used the new terminology of Legends, which would be Expanded Universe. Because people might listen to this and go, oh, so this is canon. But that's just me, maybe. See, I'm just trying to find. This is talking to Rise of the Empire, Imperialization. Where would it say about Tipo?
Would eventually go on to become known as the Grey Paladins in the future. And if you would like a more in-depth holocron about either of these factions, please let us know. But anyway, these were the Jedi Lords that Palpatine would have undoubtedly respected, as they fit the bill for what he once described to be the right way for a Jedi to wield their power. In the end, they were treated as heretics though by the Jedi, which leads us back to our question. Was it un-Jedi-like to be a Jedi Lord? Let us assess with pros and cons.
So I'm not sure where he gets the impression that maybe Palpatine would have liked them, because they're still Jedi. Right. And so they would still want to get rid of the Sith if they find that Sith are alive and doing everything. I can't find the part about the Tipo and the Essential Guide to Warfare, but it's probably there. I just don't know which part it would be in. Maybe I should look around the Rizom Reformations a bit more. It's just tricky because there's no page numbers given, and you'd have to read through the whole last book to be able to get the information. And Larenth, was her last name Tarek? I know her first name is Larenth. Larenth Tarek is a Grey Paladin in Jedi Twilight, and that's where most of the information comes in. There. This is the Grey Paladin in Jedi Twilight, where the Grey Paladins are mentioned. And I think that they just got expanded upon.
The Lords served as beacons of hope and safety in a time of great darkness and danger. They established kingdoms on planets and entire star systems which became islands of light. The people they helped out were clearly grateful and loved their rulers, enough so that they were willing to accept them more and give them more and more political power and rulership and domain. It didn't ever seem as though this power went to the Jedi Lords' heads, as they always had the well-being of their people at the forefront of their mind. The Jedi Lords were quick to respond to Sith threats, and were largely successful in their ventures against the Sith, being responsible for the creation of the Army of Light, where the High Council failed. But there were some worrying things about the Lords as well. It is very debatable whether it's good for a Jedi to have the ability to rule an entire planet. This kind of thing comes down to the maturity and the heart of the individual Jedi. Second, they broke a tenet of the Jedi Code by establishing family lines and having children to inherit their titles.
It depends what you would call the tenets of the Jedi Code, because the no attachment and the family can be quite different to the attachment rule, as shown by like Ki-Adi-Mundi and stuff. But then at the same time, the Jedi Code does not explicitly say you cannot have children and carry on family lines. Like, it probably started... shall we bring up the Jedi Code? There's a good image of it here. It's just, can you bring up the image? Open image in new tab. So it says that there's nothing in here that even says no attachment, right? There is no emotion, there is peace. There is no ignorance, there is knowledge. There is no passion, there is serenity. There is no chaos, there is harmony. There is no death, there is the Force. The no attachment rule probably came from the things like Anakin, where people, he was so passionate and emotional about fearing the death of his wife that he was unable to let go, and so was trying to chase after it and fell to the dark side. And so by extension there would have been other people that do that. And so the Jedi felt that it was a good option to have members of the Jedi Order that they'd taken from when they were children, so they wouldn't know any better, to bar the attachments and stuff. And yet there were exceptions, like Ki-Adi-Mundi in the prequels, with there's a low male population with Syrians, so he had his wives back home. And he did feel attached to them. It's like, how could you not? But the whole thing of how it's reinterpreted by Luke is it's not letting the emotions to overrule your judgment and still making the right decision despite everything going on. Where someone that does not have the power of the Force, is not part of the Jedi Order, wouldn't have to.
Histories are silent as to whether the High Council allowed them to do this, but we would guess that they did not. And third, the creation of the Grand Council...
So, that's the whole thing, right?
Their titles. The histories are silent as to whether the High Council allowed them to do this, but we...
Lord Hoth literally led the Army of Light, which was part of the main Jedi Order, in Path of Destruction, and they fought the Brotherhood of Khan. So the High Council must have approved that part at least. And I reckon they would have at least approved the start of it, because they send Jedi to planets, and then you think about the practicality of it, of going, okay, every planet is assigned a Jedi to protect them. This makes sense. But then because the Jedi are there to protect the people and they're so wise, it's probably the people, the majority of the time, that wanted the Jedi to be the Lord and make decisions for them. It wouldn't have been intentionally, yes, let's send a Jedi there to be a Lord. Yeah. They would have had changed the command, probably, for communication.
I would guess that they did not. And third, the creation of the Grand Council was a very bold move, one that could have potentially caused a schism and a war within the Jedi Order, since the Grand Council directly undermined the authority of the High Council. And finally, perhaps most prominently, the Green Jedi proved the dangers of what would happen when a Jedi is born into a role other than that of protecting the Republic. Despite being a part of the Order, the Green Jedi cared only about Corellia, shirking their duties as Jedi Knights and defenders of peace and of the innocent. When the Clone Wars broke out, they closed their borders to the Republic diplomacy and refused to do their duty with the rest of the galaxy.
He's painting it in a very bad light, isn't he? Like, their goal for the Green Jedi is to protect Corellia and its people. They care about Corellia and its people. And so the best way to do that is to keep separate from the Jedi Order and keep a separation between government and the Jedi Order. Or, if you're thinking of 3D space, maybe more directions, but yeah.
Even Grandmaster Luke would criticize one of the last surviving Green Jedi that he encountered for being too enraptured with his own planet at the expense of the rest of the galaxy. With that said...
But that's also a thing of, like, their light-sided force users with their goal of protecting Corellia. They're not a part of the Jedi Order that has the goal of let's go and protect the galaxy. They're a separate faction. The Dantooine Council is the Jedi Order, like the Jedi High Council at the time in KOTOR.
The Jedi Lords seemed to be very good for the galaxy. They were selfish instead of power-hungry, one thing that is hard to find with any ruler, especially a Force-sensitive one. Although they might have become a bit radicalized about their people, they still cared for galactic peace, the original purpose of their mission. A Jedi King for a planet would be a good idea, since the Jedi could actually meditate and listen to the Force, making changes and hard decisions for the kingdom.
This is from the Fantasy Flight game stuff.
Even one of Luke's Jedi was a queen of a planet herself, and used the Force for the benefit of her people. As far as the Grand Council goes, it definitely feels interesting that there is a whole separate council, one which holds as much power as the High Council. We know about the Council of Reconciliation, the Council of First Knowledge, and other minor councils, but they didn't hold nearly as much power and pull as the High Council did. Maybe the Grand Council would have been a good idea to keep the power and authority of the High Council in check. Perhaps if the two councils had worked together, it would have made a stronger government for the Order. But while the history is silent upon this matter, context clues make it sound like the High Council felt very threatened by the Grand Council. But what do you think, my friends? Do you think that Palpatine was right about the Jedi?
So the Grand Council is only mentioned in the Essential Guide to Warfare, so it is very difficult to really apply an in-depth knowledge to the topic when it only has one source. That being said, I think there's a lot of nuance to this discussion of, like, it would have started as a way of making sure everywhere has a Jedi to protect the planets, regardless of if they were part of the Republic or not. And then the way that it would work is that people would want them to be the Lords because they would make decisions and have better judgment than someone else that is power hungry. The power gets to them and then just rule with good judgment. The thing that I'm not sure of, and it might be in the new, the Essential Guide to Chronology, actually. Do I have it in here? It is the whole thing of no, I've got the Essential Chronology. I don't think I have the new Essential Chronology. Oh, yes, I do. Cool. It's the whole thing of where was my train of thought? Damn it. I should look at the new Essential Chronology anyway. Let me think.
Is silent upon this matter. Context clues make it sound like the High Council felt very threatened by the Grand Council. But what do you think, my friends? Do you think that
the whole thing of the Grand Council, I'd have to find the part in the Essential Guide to Warfare about it. But then it makes sense to have splinter factions because the Orthodox Jedi Order was so ingrained with the Republic that there would be people that disagree with that.
Palpatine was right about the Jedi Lords? Is this the supreme version of the Jedi? The best version? One that even Palpatine would respect and even admire?
Palpatine respects even the Orthodox Jedi like Master Yoda. I think that you can respect them without going, yes, I agree with them. Because I think he always respected Yoda, even at the end when they had their fight and stuff like that.
Back to this era, do they seem like a welcome and a necessary part of galactic peace? Or do you believe that a Jedi's duty should be to the Order and to the Republic before their own throne? We would love to hear your thoughts and insights on this in the comments down below. And as always, my friends, thank you so much for visiting the archives, and may the Force be with you.
So I think that the Jedi shouldn't be confined to a single Orthodox faction when you're talking about it like this. There is legitimate different factions like the Artesian Jedi that splintered off as well, and other factions that follow their own interpretation of the Jedi Code. It's not good for unity, but it also does make for a realistic galaxy. Like, not everyone will agree with the Jedi, even back with Dawn of the Jedi and the Civil War back then. So the new Essential Guide to Chronology. Can I search this, or are they scans? Well, let's have a squiz. So, where would the bloomin' the stuff be mentioned? Growing pains? Oh, there's so much, just walls of text to read through. Let's see if we can go, no, it doesn't want to word search. Trials of the Jedi, that's about Tales of the Jedi, and then notice, okay, we're early on here. See, I haven't read through all of these to see what information that they add in. But my interpretation of the Grey Paladins is that they were a part of the Jedi Order unofficially, and that they were kept under wraps because they did the dirty work, rather than other things. No, that's clone troopers and stuff already. Okay. So we're at the Clone Wars there, so we should be able to get information about the Lords before that. There's Grant Omega. Outbound Flight Project. Education of the Chosen One. So there should be stuff beforehand. About the Lords. And I'm just trying to skim read and see if it stands out to me. Yeah. Unlike other Jedi of the time, Ki-Adi-Mundi had children and several wives, a unique dispensation given to Syrian Jedi due to the species' low birth rate. And there was the majority of the species is female compared to male. That's why there's a low birth rate. So there's an exception to the attachment rule. So I guess in that way the Orthodox Jedi Order was hypocritical as well. I was trying to... So it's very specific. Okay, Jedi, this should be about the here. This is... That's the Brotherhood of Cain. Well, George Lucas had originally intended for that to be Kashyyyk. But with the technology at the time, they couldn't do that with how tall the Wookiees were. And so they ended up getting the Ewoks as shorter and having the suits and stuff and being able to do that. Being able to actually shoot the film, and it worked out. And so he had to change that from Wookiees to Ewoks, which also lends from his idea in Splinter of the Mind's Eye about meeting a native species and getting into it. The Ape and Queen Mother sealed the borders of the Star Cruiser centuries later. Yeah. So there's the Apes Consortium stuff. The Wookiees, I would say, would win overall. So I don't see anything about Jedi Lords here at the moment. This is jumping to Tales of the Jedi stuff. I need page numbers to really verify things. Because otherwise things are far more in the future, and I don't believe that Lords would be mentioned. Because of course it mentions Lord Hoth, but of course on Wikipedia just mentioning Lord Hoth means, okay, the Lords have a mention, and so that's in a source book. So yeah, that actually seemed to be like an EE lore video, even though it could have said that. And I still think they probably read Wikipedia and maybe went off a couple of other sources. But I would want to see the bloomin' sources for everything and have like Eckhart's Ladder does is you have the screenshot of the source and then you, as you're mentioning things, it goes through the text of it. Because actually, your Grey Paladins mentioned in a source book. That's interesting. Wikipedia doesn't mention the Grey Paladins mentioned in anything other than the Cross-Up Knights trilogy and The Last Jedi, and the Essential Reader's Companion, and a article in Insider number 139. So if I look at the Tipo Paladins part, it's only in the Essential Guide to Warfare, which would have come out after. But if the Grey Jedi were part of... if the Grey Paladins were part of the Tipo Paladins, why aren't they listed as mentioned in the Essential Guide to Warfare? Oh, we can have a look at that. Technically, the second Death Star was the third one. But anyway, yeah, I'm trying to, this is a legitimate question I'm having right now because I'm deep into it. So the Grey Paladin reference formed from Tipo Paladins and members of the Jedi Order. And then in Coruscant Knights, and then only mentioned here, is I feel like the Grey Paladins are separate to the Tipo Paladins as a subsection of the Jedi Order, and so I was thinking right from way back when I read Jedi Twilight, it'd be nice to have an unabridged audiobook for it, wouldn't it? But, yeah. And they were part of the normal Jedi Order as well. Yeah. No. Don't conflate the two. They formed their own faction, the Grey Paladins. I guess I have to read the Essential Guide to Warfare. I really feel like I should get the mention of them, but I just couldn't see them. Okay, where would, so, Blumenwell, I'll get to the videos, but, in the Essential Guide to Warfare, it would be Rise of the Empire Triumphant. Because that's when Jedi Twilight started, about when the Republic became the Empire. Talks about Imperial Navy and stuff. I'm looking for a heading to indicate something about mentioning the Grey Paladins, but it also could be they have a single mention in a paragraph about something else, and Wikipedia goes, they're mentioned in there. So I don't know. I'll see if I can have a look sometime. Because the essential guide to warfare has a lot, but then also some stuff has never been expanded upon a lot.